We are not alone. You are watching Contactee with your host, Leslie Mitchell Clark, exploring UFOlogy, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts. Hello, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, happy evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is for you. We are glad that you're joining us once again for another episode of Contactee, now in our 14th season. Hard to believe, but true. And so to earmark this wonderful occasion, we have invited back not only one of my favorite guests, certainly, but someone who always sparks interest and thought and brings things to the table to open one's minds. And I am talking, of course, about Colonel Randy Cramer. Randy has been very involved in teaching psionics and other modalities. He is an experiencer himself, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening right now in our neck of the time-space continuum. So, Randy, greetings. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see you. So, you know that there's a lot of chaotic energy going on. We've got neo-fascists. We've got this. We've got that. You did mention to me, I think not too long ago, that even though these things are somewhat terrifying, that this is making the way or creating a stable situation where there will be a shift. Now, did you mean a shift of consciousness, or is this a physical shift in some way?
But we're left with two really, really simple choices, right? Which is choice number one, which is to freak out, join the freak out, join raging insanity, and go that route. Or pick something that's more alignment oriented, where we're sinking into a version of ourselves and our realities with alignment rather than with chasing an external force or chasing away or from an external force, because there's so much of what we're seeing as external forces, and that they are the kinds of external forces that are begging people to sort of, join them. And social media as a five-headed dragon is not helping. Right? It's making all of that worse in every way, shape, or form. So we have these really two simple choices. First of all, how to react, right? Panic and getting really wrapped up emotionally, psionically in what everything's happening, which is really the easiest path to sort of anxiety, panic, which again, it's not helping. Or we can take a minute and think about whether being in our own alignment with ourselves and with our lives and with our individual path in this universe might just be slightly more important right now, because that actually has the opportunity to affect the whole in a bigger way than chasing something externally. So let me just say, fundamentally, I think as a psionics teacher, as a meditation teacher, I think we're definitely at this classic fork in the road, which comes at many times in history for us to make as human beings on planet Earth, where we can either join the parade of murder, death, mayhem, fear, anger, terror, and hatred, or we can take a minute, take a breath, align ourselves, and go look at it and go, oh, ain't that a thing? Instead of getting too, and again, that's not to minimize the importance of those things that are happening. That kind of detachment isn't about minimizing the importance or saying those things aren't important, or whether, we're at nuclear war with Iran, whatever. That's not even at all trying to minimize how important or affecting something like that is. It's saying that there's a choice that we make first. Do we go down the path, the carrot and the stick that's being put in front of us, which is some form of anger, fear, hatred, anxiety, terror, etc., and a bunch of emotional reactions that drag us, push us, pull us in a direction, or whether we choose alignment, which I just am going to encourage people to think more than likely will get you a better outcome than chasing that carrot in that state. Let me start there. And then let me immediately go to a sort of reassurance that, hey, this is all looking pretty crazy. Like it's just been getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And then the crazier it gets, you think it's gotten to crazy and it's going to get crazier and it gets crazier. And then it's almost as if we thought it was as crazy it could get. And then he came back. And then he came back and it got
Oh,
crazier and crazier and crazier
crazier and
again.
crazier.
And then we're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it can't possibly get any crazier than this. And I just want to say that sounds like I've heard that somewhere before. Where have I heard that? Where have I heard that? Oh yeah, I predicted that in those exact words years ago in December of 2019. I said, this is what's going to happen, right? Stage 1, pandemic stage. Stage 2, civil disruption phase. Stage 3, World War III phase.
Yeah.
Stage 4, we say invasion/intervention. Now we're saying maybe it's not an invasion, maybe depending on whether it feels like an invasion or an intervention, depends on whose side you're on. Or maybe what tax bracket you're in. I don't know. I'm just saying, it's different ways to look at it. But what was precisely said was this is going to keep getting crazy and crazier, nutty and nutter. And that as we get to these higher and higher points of escalation, we're going to get to these conflux of all these inevitable things colliding with each other, right? I'm just want to point out first and foremost, before we all freak out, all of this is coming to pass exactly as Special Section Intel predicted to me and that I have predicted to everyone else. So this is one of those moments where I don't want to be like, yeah, nailed it, because it just sucks, right? But I will just point out, we called it. We called all of this. We called this entire situation as it is. It is a whole bunch of things coming together. We have we can have continued civil disruption. We never said the civil disruption phase was going to end.
Right.
We never said the pandemic phase was going to end. It haven't. We still have COVID. People are still dying from it. It's still an issue around the world. It's still mutating, and depending on which way it's going on the mutation scale, depending on the people who track that, depending on whether we have really like a bad COVID season or a good COVID season, which strain has really leaves people with more long-term COVID symptoms, which are a real issue. That's like a real issue for people. So those things never ended. Pandemic stage never ended. Civil disruption phase didn't end. World War III phase, there's a beginning when we entered into that phase. Well, we're just now we're chugging along, right? If Israel and Iran are finally going at it, now we're just chugging along as predicted. So before, again, everybody panics, let's just be reminded that we called all of this, called it, said this is what's going to happen. It's going to escalate and escalate and escalate and escalate. And when you think it couldn't possibly escalate any further, or when you think it's reached this maximum point, is when we cross this threshold of something happening. And again, that something, we can either say invasion, intervention, whatever, depending on your tax bracket, depending on how that's going to feel. That these are now inevitabilities, and that what we know is that there are some red lines for some people. And so we feel that there's good indications to indicate, but this is again hard to call 100 for any of it, that the actual launching of nuclear weapons at people crosses a threshold. And that puts us in the territory where we see, again, invasion/intervention events.
Well, the intervention is, are we going to have some help from our, well-meaning, genetically related friends in our corner of the galaxy? Will we have some sort of, and I don't mean necessarily military assistance, but, as far as putting A-bombs out of action, we know that they do that.
Well, I can't answer every one of those questions with any kind of precision because I don't necessarily get read in on all of that. I have been told certain things about who's here who sort of from our friends from out of town have shown up, and
Mhm.
it's everybody we know, right?
Uh-huh.
It's all of our friends. It's
Yeah.
everybody we know. So
Mhm.
this is a big deal. This
Yeah.
isn't a little, this isn't a little, is something going to happen? No, like something is happening because all of our friends have showed up, and the inclination from top to bottom is that it's been put off long enough,
Mhm.
and that whatever stages that we're at here, it's step, 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 and we're getting towards this what we'll call a fairly total disclosure point. And I'm not saying that that means that we get everything all at once, a full total disclosure all at once kind of a thing, but there's a this threshold point that is being pushed for, that once we reach that threshold point, then we get to have way more communication, interaction, information sharing. All of that changes where we're at. We get people who want to show up, literally to just show up and help out. Like there's tangible, like hands-on helping out, right? So that we can restructure things, because this is not the first time in our galaxy that a fledgling spacefaring species has had to go through this transition. In
I'm
fact,
sure. Yeah.
it's happened a bunch of times,
Yeah.
right? So we're just going through it now, like for the first time for us, and it's freaking us out, and but it's understandable, totally understandable. But this has been done before, and so we are past the point of, well, you guys should get this underway pretty soon, and where forces on the Terran side have said, we're not ready. We need to extend some more. And we've kind of overdone that,
Mhm.
right? To the point where you guys can't stall forever, right? So we're past the point where we've been allowed to stall. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to come crushing, down, and everyone's just going to land tomorrow and freak everybody the hell out. There's still these delicate steps that we have to go through. And a lot of those delicate steps have to do with the sort of delicate management of the incredibly fragile geopolitical system that we have, right,
Yeah.
underneath that. Even though that system supports and is kind of manipulated, controlled by this other system, it's still, as a structure, it's pretty fragile.
Hmm.
And so and because there are still people as part of that system who would die to stop disclosure from happening.
Yeah.
They would sacrifice any number of lives that they have at their disposal, and they are willing themselves, because they don't necessarily want to live in a world where they don't have all the stuff that they have right now, because a post-disclosure world would mean they wouldn't have all the stuff that they have now, because they have too much things that they shouldn't have now anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm wink wink nudge nudging hinting at just some of the worst who have some of the worst of the worst at their disposal, and all of that would go away.
Yeah.
And so they're not happy about that. They're willing to fight for that. They're willing to die for that. They're willing to let other people die for that. They're willing to kill for that. So if it were so simple to just say, hey, we need to just do this changeover, and everyone could go, all right, and then we do that. But it's so complicated with the people who still don't want to do it cooperatively.
Hmm.
So there's I don't know why I'm thinking of this example. There was this I think it went, unfortunately, because of mismanagement, went very, very defunct. But there used to be this outfit in Indiana called the Great Ape Trust, and they had a collection of habitat of bonobo chimpanzees, who are some of the smartest freaking chimpanzees in the world. And
Hmm.
they had, in fact, several of the adult males had been taught simple tool using. Like the male could like bang out stone tools and like cut stuff with it, and like test the sharpness on his lips to see if it was good, and it could like would make Stone Age tools because someone showed him, not because some guy sat down there and busted out, like a Stone Age knife, and he watched him and was like, okay, I can do that. And so he mimicked that. He was able, someone taught him how to make a fire. He could collect sticks, break sticks, pull out a lighter, light it with a lighter. He could make fire. The mother ended up figuring out how to use scissors So she could groom the baby with scissors, like without poking him, without hurting him. Like she was totally very gently would get in there and trim his little nappy hairs off and stuff. And there's this one moment where he reaching out and grabbing the scissors, right? And he's like trying to pull him in. He's just a baby. And what does she do? Does she reach over and grab the scissors and go, "Oh my God," and yank them away? No, no. In the absolute most delicate hand she possibly could, she reaches over and grabs the scissors and then ever so slowly and gently pulls them away from the little baby so he doesn't hurt himself with the scissors. But it is absolutely the most genteel gesture that she makes that I would say even rivals the compassion of some human mothers that might just grab that and go, "What are you doing with those scissors?" Right?
Yeah.
Risking that someone might actually get more cut or more hurt with the object by yanking them away than delicately separating them. So for some
Hmm.
reason this is all coming to mind, that in some way we should think about this as someone who's really trying to be nice enough, compassionate enough, and understanding enough to like gently pull the scissors out of our hand before we poke ourselves or somebody else with, and that any sudden movements really could just be more damaging than, protecting. And
I
so
see.
that the
Yeah.
what we if we, because I'm down here with y'all as well, we down here are seeing this as a slow motion wreck, disaster. And of course, we're going, "What are you waiting for? For
Yeah.
God's sake, step
Please.
in already! Oh my God, the humanity!" I mean, we're in it. And
Yeah.
so that's an oh the humanity moment for people when
Yeah.
we're in it. But for the perspective of someone who's trying to sort it out, they're gently trying to take the scissors away so that no one gets poked, or that, again, minimizing, fatalities, minimizing casualties. I've always also, when talking about this, anyone who's heard me talk about this over the years knows that I will at some point come around to the conversation that one of the number one priorities that we always have, that I know special section personnel has, covert military space program personnel, extraterrestrial interventionist invasion personnel, is minimizing casualties,
Hmm.
minimizing fatalities, that we see this scaling of what could be, dear God help us, oh goodness gracious, dear goodness gracious God, like horrible scenario, or that it might. Oh, sorry, my phone ringing now. I just had a brain fart. I completely lost my train of thought where I was going with all of that.
Well, just how the assistance will manifest, and I think that was your wonderful alliteration about the
Scissors being
scissors.
taken out of the hands of a baby. Right. Thank you. If you got to edit and clean that up later in post, that's cool. All right. So, uh, brain fart. So, right. Okay. So what we have is a situation where we see it, we're panicky. Externally, there's this attempt to diffuse a situation so that we minimize casualties, right? We don't want 300 million people dead. We don't want 1.5 billion people dead. If we can, dear goodness gracious, keep it into like the double digit millions, which I know to sound, it still is a lot, right? But that means if anywhere from 25, 35, 50 million people, if we can keep total global casualties, in the double digit millions and not in the hundreds of millions, that is absolutely positively a successful operation in this situation. But there's so many things happening. So many things happening. This is where we are starting to see all of these, so to speak, cracks in the dike uh, pushing out. So I
Yeah.
will I will throw in as something that's creeping up. People that I've been working with who are doing memory retrieval issues, stuff like that. Those people are going through some processes that are far more classified than I can discuss. But let's just say that people are not old friends are knocking at their doors and helping them sort some shit out right now.
Mhm.
So there are things happening, rippling under the surface, behind the scenes, which people aren't seeing, which are rumbling, and they're rumbling fast and hard. We're definitely starting to see what we've known are these deeply embedded iceberg programs into people's brains in case of, apocalyptic emergency globally, crazy, horrific situations um, that involve, again, hundreds of millions of people minimum, probably billions of people worldwide. And we're now seeing that those iceberg programs that we've known are there, that we've, through the lengthy study of so many different subjects around the world, we know is there. We're absolutely starting to see some of that like actually start to click. So I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you from an internal perspective, a behind the scenes perspective, oh, is the wind up happening, right? In ways that you can't see from the front of the stage, that you can't
Yeah.
see from, attacks and missiles and,
Yeah.
all of that craziness and the, you know, armed Marines in the street and so forth. And which I will say, it seemed like the military commanders were sort of outsmarting that situation. They were like, okay, we'll show up, but we'll do our job, which is stand around.
Yeah.
And a couple of people that got detained, by Marines were like immediately, released. They were just like, their job was like, fine, we can detain this person for like 5 minutes and then, let them go. So to the credit of the Marines who were present and
Oh,
and the
yeah.
commanders who were present, which in case anybody doesn't know this and
Mm-hmm.
thinks that the Marines just showed up to kick in people's heads, the Marine commanders on the ground were very much like, okay, we'll show up and we will do what our legally, constitutionally mandated job is, which is pretty much to stand there
Yeah.
and do nothing because we're not constitutionally mandated to do anything else. And then, like I said, so they weren't there to punch anybody, hit anybody, shoot anybody, throw anything at anybody. They literally stared, and a couple of people that were taken into temporary custody were not held on to for more than I think, an hour or an hour and a half or 15 minutes or something like that. It was an incredibly short amount of time for someone to be in custody that were immediately released. So to their credit, the Marines did not participate
Mm-hmm.
outside of their lawful mandate, which is pretty
Right.
much
Right.
nothing. And so they
Yes.
basically did just about nothing, again, to their
Thank
credit.
God.
So
I know.
my salute to the smart
Yes.
commanders who were just like, all right, we'll do what our absolutely constitutionally, legally mandated job is, which is nothing in this situation. So we'll stand
Yeah.
there. And they pretty much what they did.
Good. Randy, do you think that there, and I don't know, we've never talked about this in all these years. Do you think that there is a presence of a, parallel society, possibly, Hyperboreans or inner Earth people, Gartha? Are these humanoids? Is this a society that has managed to survive various resets on Earth? And would they join us? Would they come up and out and join us in the restructuring of a higher dimensional Earth?
So, according to the best info that we have, the first answer to that question is yeah, that there are those people. They do live down there, they do exist. It's also more complicated than that. There's some other species, extraterrestrial species, that are not from here that live there.
Mm-hmm.
We also have like an indigenous evolved reptoid species that lives down there, that an indigenous insectoid species that lives down there. At least one. I mean, of each of those, maybe more that I'm not even fully aware of. Excuse me, it's an incredibly rich ecosystem. Um, so I tried to explain these massive pockets of magma and water
Mm-hmm.
over millions of years move, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boring holes, massive chambers, pockets moving around so that you could think of like a massive pocket of magma on one side of the earth of the planet is going to move around and do a circulation cycle like every 10,000 years or something like that. It's going to slowly move through these different pockets and stuff's going to change and environments are going to change. And so you have So you have chambers that are hot magma. You have chambers that are salt water. You have chambers that are fresh water. You have chambers that are breathable gases. You have chambers that are toxic, deadly gases. And this is stuff that we even see close to the surface.
True.
One of the largest crystal caverns is in Mexico. And I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
got the crystals that are like 4 feet
Mm-hmm.
wide and like 20 feet long. They're absolutely gigantic. If you ever look at photos of it, there's people and they've got like these yellow, EV suits on it. It's because it's a toxic chlorine, slightly hydrochloric
Yeah.
gas
Mm-hmm.
environment. You die if you were trying to breathe that air. You could not survive in that environment. So it's this, you go down and it's the same. There
Yeah.
are places you can breathe, places that you can't, places where certain things live, places where certain things don't, places where it's just flooded, and places where there's a nice pond. And I mean, it's all these, it's a rich ecosystem. So we've have our own species that have evolved there. Some of us surface dwellers that went down there. You have other species from other worlds that have come here that have decided when they got here that like down there was better than on the surface. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a rich ecosystem of some of our own evolved denizens, Terrans that were born, evolved here, and some not, some friends from out of town that are not from here, but are also consider this now home. I probably brought this one up before. Enkidu, Sasquatch, Bigfoots,
Mm-hmm.
right? They've been here for about 450,000 years or something like that. This is absolutely their home now, but they're not originally from here. They're transplants.
Mm-hmm.
So
So it's a whole potpourri of
yeah, and so
different
and they pretty much
civilizations.
yeah, and they pretty much their legal like count, the Agarthan Council or whatever, which is a loose congregate of various leadership people from those organizations that then can sort of make these collective kind of decisions about especially about interacting with the surface dwellers. They're pretty much in like they're pretty much in chair with the intergalactic Senate right now. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever the intergalactic community is doing and is about, the Agarthan Council is also involved in that process. So I would fully expect that when some of our friends from out of town come down and help out, some of our friends from out of town will come up and help out.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I
And
suspect we'll be seeing both of that.
I,
In most cases, most people won't know the difference. You know what I'm saying? Most people
yeah,
won't have any clue whether that
yeah.
spaceship that just landed actually came from space or whether it came from underneath you. It might be either one.
Because there are thousands upon thousands of sightings of craft entering mountains. And of course, I'm sure some chunk of that is military or reverse engineered or whatever you wish to call it. But are the Agarthans rather scientifically sophisticated in the sense that they do use craft and leave the environment and go maybe to other planets?
I would say that of the, I want to say that there's less than seven globally uh, currently that I'm aware of,
Hmm.
of the intergalactic spaceports that are still functioning on planet Earth. As
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned to people before, having lived in Sedona before, Sedona, Arizona is absolutely one of the most active, straight up busiest intergalactic spaceports on the planet for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone who lives there knows that just from what you see on a
Yeah.
day-to-day.
Special energy there. I haven't lived there, but God knows I've passed through so many times. There's special energy there. Yeah.
And again, but just what you see, just vehicles, daytime, nighttime, like what you just start to see in terms of traffic becomes like this undeniable, regular, consistent thing that just is happening all the time so much that after so many months or a year or whatever of living there, you're just like, oh, this just happens here, like all the time. This is what goes
Yeah.
on here. That you
Yeah.
realize it's not that every time you saw something that wasn't like, ooh, that's a special one in a million thing. It's like, no, this happens here all the time is why you saw
Right.
that. Like that's the difference between maybe seeing something in a completely different location where activity is way lower versus
Mhm.
in something where you realize it's a spaceport here.
Yeah.
So my understanding of all of those spaceports are essentially run by collective Agarthan personnel, non-Terran personnel. But basically, that territory is owned and managed by some Agarthan personnel. Like they have right of, this is our territory. We said we would, that we made the territory that said you could come through this portal to get to our down spot, and this is the spaceport area where people can come in, and we might have some stuff going on around there depending on the civilization of the time. But they basically have dominion and ownership of that territory and that land and of those spacing lanes and the management of that. So
Cool.
they're completely in charge of that. So
Wow.
yeah, my understanding is they'll be involved in the whole process, and probably for most people, they won't know the difference until it really is getting explained later on in the process that, oh yeah, some of these people aren't from there, they're from here.
Yeah.
And try not to get people to freak out about that.
Oh man.
Because some people, because
Well,
some religious people will want to freak out about that. What do you mean they're from down there? That's where the devil lives. And they're gonna freak out a little bit. So we have to try and so again, pulling the
we have
scissors
to take the
gently
scissors
away from the
away
baby.
from the
Yeah,
babies. Well,
yeah.
it's a very good analogy.
But we're definitely approaching where all those things are going to come together, and this is gonna shift like
Hmm.
soonish. And again, every
Hmm.
time I say that, oh, I'd love it for it to be tomorrow. I wish it was last Tuesday. I'm sort of the wrong person to ask when
Hmm.
people want to know, well, when's it going to happen? Because I want it to happen. Well, how about this afternoon's good for me? Is it good for you? Okay, then let's say it's going to happen this afternoon because that's what I want. So
Hmm.
let's just say that. But when is it actually going to happen? Yeah, I wish I could say, but we are in the end state. We are definitely end game here. This is
Yeah.
the end game right now. So that's actually a good place to be,
Yeah.
right? As freaky and wild and explosive as that is, end game is good because end game means it's almost over.
It's almost over.
And,
Yeah.
it's just going to be harrowing a little bit, but it's going to be more harrowing the more you believe that that's all like fact and it's just going to happen that way and the world is blow up in horrible World War III. Like the more you're tuned in to watching the news or listening to people's commentaries about it, not that I'm trying to tell people to like completely disengage because I don't know that's the healthiest thing to do, but I have to say for my own sake I've almost completely disengaged from
Yeah.
listening to
I have as
what's
well. I've
going on.
had to.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that the absolute choice is, do I just really be a better person about being aligned right now so that I'm in the right space doing the right things? I'm
Mhm.
aligned instead of worrying about having manifested enough bricks and mortars or something in my world that I'm aligned instead. It seems to be way more important than reacting to
Oh,
what's
I agree.
happening outside.
Yeah.
And people who are like, I'm leaving the country, I'm headed to Europe. And I'm really like, well, thanks. I'd like to go to Europe too, but
Yeah.
um,
I'd like to
and
just go home to my home country, but I'm barred right now. I'm still a U.S. citizen, but the new edict that's come down is if you maintain your residence outside the U.S., which I do in Canada, even though I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm a dual citizen, I cannot enter right now.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a lot
it's
of
pretty bad.
weirdness, but it's going to pass, Randy. And what do you think about now? There's been a lot of focus lately, especially during this past year. I know Linda Moulton Howe has been very involved with this. There's been a lot of focus on what's going on in Antarctica. And first of all, I think we all know that Antarctica was at one time a tropical environment before the poles shifted. Is there, in fact,
Think at one point it was the pinnacle, like spaceport, like we were just talking
um,
about these intergalactic spaceports. I believe at its time of its functionality, it was the largest, the most trafficked, the biggest, the highest populated spaceport on planet Earth in the system. Yeah, it was not just like a site, it was the biggest airport, spaceport, like of them all. It was huge.
are we talking about the Anunnaki here, the ancient Sumerians, or
We're talking about, again, a large collective of species.
Oh.
So, yeah, my understanding was that one of the main archaeological discoveries when they started steaming away all the ice
Hmm.
a few years back. I'm losing track of time and sort of like years, so I don't think I could say off the top of my head how many years ago now we're talking about, but we're talking about some
2 years.
years ago
Yeah. Yeah.
that they started doing the archaeological proper dig research, which is mostly using like these big steam guns
Hmm.
that melt ice because if you just you blow steam on the ice, it melts. It's super easy. But you don't have to sit there and like crack ice and endanger things and so forth. You just slowly melt it with these big old steam guns. Um, and they've uncovered a ton of stuff. And the most interesting thing that I got briefed on was a massive um, chamber or series of chambers that were all filled with these stasis tubes, stasis
Mm.
pods with bodies in them in stasis.
Hmm.
Now, my understanding is that the size and shape of these stasis pods were anywhere from about yay big to well over 35, 40 feet long, and that they contain the absolutely, completely, actively hibernating, alive drone bodies. No, we think drone bodies, meaning that they didn't just put themselves into hibernation, 100,000 years ago and went sleepy, sleepy, but that these are in fact teleoperatable avatars that
Hmm.
members of these species would use while being here, because in many cases that's actually safer than visiting in your own flesh and blood. This is something we do. This is something a lot of species do,
Yes. Yeah.
where you instead of putting on a spacesuit, you put on an avatar body, just like the movies and the Avatar movies. You put on like you teleoperate is the word that we're using about the technology. You teleoperate an avatar body, and that way, if that body gets sick or infected or anything like that, you can just incinerate it when it comes back, and
Hmm.
then you're fine, right? You steered a drone that you can incinerate because it can get biologically, again, virally infected or whatever, and you're fine. Like other species do that, we do that. It's a super common thing. I've talked about it before. I won't belabor
Yes.
the point, but we're pretty sure that these were all just leftover teleoperatable uh, vehicles that these species had left here because they might come back. They might need them later. I mean, it was, like what? Yeah, we think like maybe they might need them later. Maybe they might be coming back. We weren't sure. But they seem to have left them. They seem to be completely in a live biological state. There seem to be connecting points between those pods and other ships that are connected to them. So there's a whole like bunch of interesting stuff that they found there that's covers, at least 150, 200, maybe 250,000 years worth of archaeological evidence, which is huge. And I even say that from an intergalactic point of view, that for most species, um, 15, 20,000 years of history is really about the most that most species can sort of absorb and keep track of. Not saying that species don't have information that goes older than that. I'm saying that it becomes a lot to keep track of your history past that many years, that many thousands of years. So if a species to really understand like its history 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, they have stuff, but that's why they also have archaeology, because they don't necessarily have intact libraries that are 200,000 years old. So when you're talking about anything really over 25,000 years old, even in an intergalactic scale, that's getting archaeologically old. So we're talking about things that are at least 100, 150, 200, 250,000 years old. So even on an intergalactic archaeological point of view, that's some really old stuff. So this
Yeah.
is a significant archaeological find, not just for us and our planet, but also because of what intergalactic hierarchy was even connected with that at the, like the intergalactic community 200,000 years ago is not the same as the intergalactic Senate as it runs now, right? So this is a completely, like a remnant of a completely different hierarchy, of a completely different system of species who have evolved since then. I mean, come on, we're talking about 100 plus, maybe 200,000 years. Like we've evolved in the last 100, 200,000 years. So the species that we're talking about may not even be like that anymore. They very likely are some form of more evolved version. I mean, this is what makes my mind go like as I contemplate this and the way it's been explained to me, because it's not typical to have this kind of information, to have access to this kind of archaeological information. And it really does represent this lengthy separation in intergalactic living and intergalactic hierarchy and sort of the intergalactic system. So we can learn so much from this archaeological process that I think it's absolutely fascinating, incredible. So what I've heard is that there's this continued debate and argument about releasing information and trying to officially say that it's a real dig, and to actually like push for a way of disclosing information by disclosing this archaeological site. And some people think that by introducing this conversation, this sort of disclosure conversation, by doing it archaeologically first, it's a sound argument, that by doing it archaeologically first, you give people a chance to go, I'm going to think about it, and to absorb it, deny it, or accept it, reject it if they want. But you do give a certain percentage of the population to go, well, archaeology is science, and they do know some things. I mean, to some people, that it will click in their head that that means something, and maybe they can work with that. So again, slowly pulling scissors away from a baby's hand, all of that can be seen as different ways of, inching, trying to do this. So my understanding is there is a conversation that's this kind of a conversation that's about making that happen. So I couldn't make a prediction on how or when that could happen, but hey, fingers crossed, I'm down.
Yeah. And
But if you know anything else that you're wanting to ask actually specific questions about, I'm sorry, feel free.
Oh, I just wanted to actually just make sure that there is no presence of Nazis in New Schwabiland. That that they say that they weren't able to establish a base, and they're missing submarines, but that there was
no. They did. They absolutely did. That's a thing that happened. That was real. I couldn't tell you the current state of the New Schwabenlanders, and I could not tell you the current state of their fleet, their position. All I would say is that their any strength that we would have said 5 years ago that they have, I would say has been greatly diminished at this point. I don't want to say any more comments that I don't have any like really greater clarity on that I could really be super specific with. So rather than try to be specific about something that I don't have the specifics that I could give you that I'd be happy with or content with, let's just say that it's a certainty that their power has diminished in all of this, and we're just sorting some stuff out. I don't think they've been I don't think they're all dirt napping just yet, but I don't think they're long for being at the negotiating table, if I do say so.
Good. Now, Randy, before we go, I want to make sure that you tell everybody the best way to reach you. And I know you're going to be teaching probably both online and in person from your home location. So how can people reach out and sign up for classes?
Yeah, so the website that I concocted together after the old one got stolen by, what's her name? I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
we won't talk about that. Is CaptainRandyCramer.com, where CAPT, the abbreviation, RandyCramer.com. Classes are there. My mailing list is there.
Oh, good.
People can send me messages there.
Yes.
People can get consultations there. People can get Velodian healing sessions there. All that's available. And I, for some folks, I'm still cleaning up my message box and getting back to folks about appointments and things, because I was out of state for a while. I was helping my mom. She broke a bunch of stuff. And then with what just happened, which I know we didn't really talk about, but my whole world went upside down and inward again about a week ago. But yes, I'm going back to Sedona, and I'm absolutely planning to do a live class for sure in Sedona. And then, I do want to do, I think it's finally time on my own website, and I often usually do like a monthly live class, just like something that we can revisit or do, and have kind of a group class and discussion with it. And I've decided to do the telepathy with non-human intelligence class.
Great.
So, but I'm making people take my beginning course as a prerequisite. So if you haven't taken my beginning course and you want to take the class in telepathy with non-human intelligence, you will need to take the beginning course, which is just fundamentals in meditation, grounding, centering, alignment, basic meditation. So we're all on the same page with, what skills, work for what tools we're going to be talking about to get people to make communication. Because I feel like my chain of communication through special section intelligence has not been bad, but there was a little misleading, to me with what was supposed to be a huge disclosure event that ended up not being as nearly as big it was supposed to be, which I found out later was because no one asked me when, the plan was apparently to introduce these options to the outgoing U.S. presidential administration and the incoming U.S. presidential administrations, and both rejected that they would bother with it. And I was like, what was the incentive? And apparently there really wasn't any. So I feel like all in all, I feel a bit sucker punched by that, because it looks to me like it wasn't even a thing that they really wanted to do, or that they wanted either administration to accept. They were just going to offer them this thing that they knew they'd say no to, so that they could go on to something else anyway, but then made this huge big deal as if they were going to get somebody to say yes, and then it told me to make a big deal about it, which I did, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, oh, you made me look bad. That's not okay. I'm pissed off about that. But then when I found out just how it all happened, I was like, well, that's if someone had even said to me, here, this is what we're planning on doing, I would have said, well, then I'm not going to say what you just told me to say, because that's not going to work. You're not going to make either of those things happen. So I feel like if I had been given the right information, I would have known to shut my mouth and not say anything about it. So I feel a little like hoodwinked by my own people to say, we want you to say this, but we're not going to give you all the information. And I'm all pissed off about that. So main reason why I wanted to do this class is because, all right, I'm fine. Let's give up. Let's give up as far as trusting some of our human, resources. Let's go ahead and get more direct information from our friends and neighbors from out of town, because I think some of them we can trust maybe a little bit better than some of our own kind at the moment. I hate to say that. I really hate to say that. It makes me feel bad to have to say that. But I think it's maybe important, if we want to get the truth and get to a more aligned place, that going directly to our non-human intelligence friends and neighbors is probably better off than putting too much reliance on our own human friends and neighbors at the moment. I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of reason to put a lot of trust in my fellow human beings right now.
Yeah. Well, Randy, I know that you are out there opening people's minds, putting good energy, centering, and being the best human, the best person, the best soul that you can be. And I think that, I'd love everybody to kind of take that away, to release some frustration, release the anger part, and there's a lot of it, and just think about accelerating the whole vibe of Earth, putting the good vibe out there, doing the good work, helping people who are frustrated and confused and angry. That's what I try to do, every day as a therapist. And you do the same thing as a teacher and a counselor and someone with tremendous insight. So I just want to thank you, Randy, for being with us once again. And let's do this again soon once you're resettled in your groovy place. And we're going to work on, maybe through Contactee, maybe even if it's possible, bringing you to Toronto for some live presentations. So we'll.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, my only concern, right, is not that they wouldn't let me out of the country, but whether or not they'd let me back in, right?
Oh.
So even I got to wonder whether I should leave the country in case I want to actually come back.
You're right, Randy. We'll cool it for a while.
Iffy. It's so iffy for anybody.
It
right
is.
Now. I don't blame anybody for like making cautious choices there, because I don't know. I don't need any hassle coming back if I'm going back and forth.
That's a good point.
I would have said 2 years ago, hey, Canada's our best friend. What's the problem? Well, apparently some people don't think Canada's our best friend.
Apparently
anymore,
not.
so.
Apparently not. Well, elbows up, Canada. That's what I say to that. Well, buddy, thank you for joining us again believe it or not, the 14th year of Contactee. You were with us right in the very beginning, and we're going to continue on. And this is going to be seen not only on YouTube, but on a variety of podcast platforms. So we're going to get the word out, and let's keep our intentions good and pure. And I suggest anyone that is interested in Randy's particular psionics teaching, meditation teaching. I've done both with you at different times. I highly recommend it. And let's get into the real-time communication with our cousins from out of town. That's what I say.
Yeah, and I'm really excited because doing the in-person class again means that I can totally teach the telekinesis class, because there's just a little difficulty with getting people to build the trainers right, to doing it as an online teaching, but as an in-person class act, I got 100% of every participant in every class that we taught that technique to in a live class. So I know that we can absolutely get people to replicate that as an in-person class. So I'm always excited to be able to do that, because then I know that I can teach people the TK technique and teach them how to build a proper trainer so people can practice that. So I'm excited about that for that reason, because I've had people begging me for so long and so many years to do that again. And I've said, well, and I've just had to say, well, we had some wrinkles as an online, course to teach that as, but as an in-person class, 100% of every student of every class that I ever taught that to could replicate the technique at the end of a weekend. So I'm super excited to be.
Wonderful. Well, Colonel Randy Cramer, thank you. Safe travels. And we will be back in touch with you soon. Semper Fi. Okay.
Bye.
All right, buddy. Take care. We are not alone. You are watching Contactee with your host, Leslie Mitchell Clark, exploring UFOlogy, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts.